Hey, welcome back to Change the Odds, the podcast where marriage and family were never meant to be a game of chance. Blaine and Adrienne.
Hello.
Here we are.
Yes.
Are we good?
Fun.
Are we good this morning? Everything good?
Oh, yeah.
We got the kids.
Minimal
Kids are going.
fighting.
Yeah.
You know, we're usually good for 1 or 2 fights at the beginning of the day, just small.
Yes.
But we got through
We've
it.
been on the same team this morning.
Today,
Oh.
it was us against the kids.
There you
Yeah.
go. I love
Yes.
it. I love
Yeah.
it.
Yes.
Well, I didn't
And we
know.
won.
I
We
didn't
won.
know what kind of day it was like, so I brought my friend,
I
Dr.
love
Barbara
this.
Wilson,
Yes.
clinical psychologist. So we got an expert here for
Yes.
us.
Finally.
Great. And if you need any help, I'm happy to.
There we go.
Thank
Just-
you.
You can
Referee.
just
Yes.
Zell over the copay, and
Yeah.
she can take care of that. So here's what I want to talk about today. I want to talk about this idea of how do we talk about sex? Because as I look at and deal with couples and speak across the country and do what I do, I would say for the average couple, so outside of active addiction, abuse, or adultery, let's push that to the side. If that's you, get some help. You can work on it. But everybody else, I would say the biggest issue is an inability to have honest conversations about what do I like, what do I not like, what do I dislike, what's the frequency, and instead what happens is if it is talked about, it is with frustration and anger when things aren't going well. So it's not like there is 2 days later after a great interaction, hey, let's deconstruct how well that went. That never happens. But if sex is supposed to happen tonight and it doesn't happen tonight, then the fight's on and there's tension until it actually does take place. And I think for the average couple, if we could learn how to talk about sex, it would make a radical difference. Because then, if you can't talk about sex between you and your spouse, you're going to really struggle to talk about with your kids. And so your kids are going to find out. They're going to learn either from you or from somebody else. So if you can't have this conversation with your kids, well, who are they having the conversations with, and what is that going to be like? So that's what I want to talk about today.
Awesome.
Don't forget, Change the Odds is part of the Thrive Podcast Network, and so you can go to the Thrive Podcast Network website, find all the good conversations that are going on, the Bible study with Kurt Harlow, Dina Davidson, Mark Clark podcast. You can listen to his sermons. Morgan and Leslie, Am I Doing This Right? Wesley Town on mental health. Johnny Schroyer with business leaders. All sorts of great content across the board. Great. I can't figure out what is my second favorite podcast among that list, but we know everybody's favorite is Change the Odds. So Barbara, let's just talk with just some general picture here of, is my premise correct that many couples struggle to talk about sex? And if so, what are some of the roadblocks that are hindering that intimate conversation?
Whoa, yeah, there's a lot probably. First of all, just family of origin. Was that something that you were able to talk about? Was there a comfort in that?
Blaine, Adrienne, in y'all's family, how was sex talked about growing up?
I don't remember talking about it. I don't know if they did and I blocked it out, but from what I can remember, it wasn't talked about so much that I learned a lot of things from friends. And I have one embarrassing story. Can I share it?
Oh,
I'm getting sweaty and
Set the
nervous about
marker.
it. Well, when a lady gives oral sex to a man, I thought it was like blowing into a juice box.
Oh,
And you would fill it up with air and it would squirt back out at you.
okay.
You stumped them.
Okay.
I'm still trying to get that
This is the
visual.
most fascinating.
Yeah. You
Yeah.
can cut that.
Okay, no. We might expand upon.
And I said,
this.
I was
Yes.
like, oh, I would never do that because like I wouldn't want to anyways.
Yes.
And they were like, oh, that's not how it works. And I said this to my friends in high school and they're like, that's not how this works.
Oh, okay.
And I, yeah.
a lot.
I was wondering how long it took to figure out this is not how.
On our wedding night.
I didn't know this. I didn't know that this was a learning
Yes.
experience of hers.
Okay.
For me, I was the youngest of 4 brothers, so a lot of this world was brought into the home through girlfriends and relationships, and I was just kind of watching it all unfold. We would have talked about it a bit more, and it wouldn't have been so taboo to talk about it, but it was a very Christian religious upbringing. The expectations were save yourselves until marriage,
Or else.
or else, yeah.
Kind of
And
fear driven.
But any like kind of tools on, or, how to do that? How to, like it's
No.
Good
osmosis.
luck.
You kind of go, don't have sex,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
nobody's talking about like even
No.
that was my
Yeah.
It was like shame,
experience too.
a bit of
Yeah.
a shame culture.
I didn't even know what intercourse. Like I had to go I had to go searching through books because nobody, not even in school, we didn't have it in school or in our
Yeah.
churches. My parents weren't talking about it. So
No.
literally went out into the world completely naive and unprepared.
Yeah.
Yep.
Which I didn't want my kids to be.
Our
So
whole
we started
discussion-
talking about sex early.
Our whole discussion was
Okay.
I was a kid in the 90s. And so there were two main topics that were going on. One was true love waits. So save yourself for marriage.
Yeah.
And the other one was Jesus was going to return by 1999 because of the turn of the millennium. And just in doing the math, I was
You
like,
didn't have much time.
Wait a second.
Shoot.
I probably won't be married yet. And so it became this great prayer, right?
Yeah.
Of Jesus, hold
Hang
off.
on. Hang on.
I have a joke like that where I was like, I'll wait if you wait till I've waited.
I would pray that too, God. Just hang on till I
Yeah.
get married.
We just want to experience it
So
one
how
time.
do y'all handle that now? You have kids that are of different ages. What's that like in y'all's home?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's part of the questions that we have right now is what is appropriate, how do we do it?
Yeah.
Our friends are discussing because now boy and girl friendships amongst family where we're really hanging out all the time, and the kids go off and they're playing in the bedroom, and they happen to play family. What's happening here? What's going on? You assume naivety, but at the same time, one boy learned something at school and says,
Absolutely.
this is how it works, right? And it's like, oh wow, this came quicker than we thought.
Yeah.
So our oldest is 8. He's a boy. And then we have 2 girls, 6 and 3. And I think we're wondering now, like, is it time to talk to our 8-year-old very,
Matter of fact.
Yeah,
Or
just like-
It's, I mean, even the other ones are 5 and
6 and 3 girls.
even your 6-year-old.
Yeah.
So, I do a talk on crucial conversations through the ages and stages,
Okay.
like what should you start talking about, even in that preschool. So even early, starting at 4, 4 or 5. And I don't have the list with me now, but I have great resources, even on my website. Just there's a whole series of books that you can, because I think for parents, you don't just bring up the topic with a 4-year-old, but using some tools like having a great little book that's age appropriate, that starts talking about, so even at 3 or 4, you can start talking about mommies and daddies and what a family is.
Good touch, bad touch, right? Because that's
there's
an
some
important
great
thing.
resources. In fact, my daughter-in-law was showing me about a book she got for her kids. One is for a more younger elementary about good touch, not only good touch, bad touch, but I'm thinking about good pictures, bad pictures. And then there's another sequel to that for older kids to be able to start.
Sorry, is Good Touch, Bad Touch a book?
No, just the idea,
Just the idea
of
of-
what is appropriate or not
Right,
appropriate.
but okay.
And also when our kids were little, whenever we would go to the doctor, I would just explain to Silas or Ella, look, this is going to be a place where the doctor is going to be able to look at some places that other people shouldn't look.
Yeah.
And so this is going to be okay. Mom and dad are here. This is okay. It's
Yeah.
appropriate.
Wow.
But if anybody else ever
Yep.
tries to do that, let's have this is
We
what
do
you do
that.
and how you have that
Yeah.
conversation.
Yeah.
But not just about somebody touching them, but we need to also remind our children if someone wants them to touch them.
Yeah.
Because I think sometimes that isn't communicated.
Okay.
Where children, adults want them to touch them.
Yeah.
And so, kind of both sides of that coin.
Okay. So then it's time.
It's time.
Yeah.
It's time.
I think the big thing for me is we grew up in an age in which you hear about the talk. Have you had the talk? Am I going to have the talk? And that to me is so misleading because it pretends like it's one thing that happens.
Yeah.
Instead, to me, it becomes this climate in which this is an aspect of life. And so if it needs to be talked about, we talk about it. And
Like
along the way,
open communication all the time.
All the time.
Yeah.
I mean, so for us, and this is just how we approached it. We had just a no slang rule. I got this from my doctor back in Arkansas. He had it with his family. I thought that's a brilliant concept. So from the earliest of ages, we're going to call things what they are.
Yeah.
We're not going to be embarrassed by them.
Right.
We're not going to have slang words. We're not going to have that kind of thing. We are going to talk about, right, as you begin to age a little bit. Look, it's not appropriate appropriate to hold yourself like that in public. Well, it's not appropriate to hold yourself like that in the living room. Like if you want to hold yourself that way, go to your bedroom, but we're not going to do that in the living room. Funny story, obviously Ella and Silas are very little. We're calling things, right? Family value here. We're going to tell the truth. We're not going to lie to you. Don't have to tell you everything you know. We're not going to lie to you. We're going to call things the way they are. We were sitting at Thanksgiving lunch, and my 89-year-old grandmother is to my left. My 88-year-old grandfather is to my right. Silas is at the end of the table the other way, and he's learning these things. He's trying to process, like, what's what. Middle of Thanksgiving lunch, he goes, Mamaw have a penis? And being true to our word that we will not lie or try to tell you, and I said, not as far as I know. And so,
Right.
and so, but just
Well, that's confusing.
the looks around the table at how is this appropriate conversation? So you have to be prepared for the embarrassment.
Yeah.
But
I think it creates a safety for your children. So if you're teaching them the correct anatomical words, then if someone is teaching them something different, they'll, and they come home and they use a different word for that, then it's like a little clue for you. Okay, where did you hear that? So
that's a
them,
good point.
I have a funny story because, because I started the same. I agree to teach your children the anatomical words. But I think my 5-year-old, my oldest son, he went to school and the teacher, I don't know why they were teaching them about body parts. Anyways, he comes home and says, I learned what a vagina is. I said, oh, what's a vagina? And I said, he goes, oh, it's one of the girls' private parts. I said, I think it's called a vagina. He goes, nope. My teacher said it's a vagina and she should know.
And you're in Canada. Are you here or are you in Canada?
And I said, okay, I defer.
Yeah. She should know.
One wonder I have is the difference between, okay, this is how babies are made, right? This is what's going on here. But then when does it become appropriate as like, this is a very awesome part of marriage. It should be celebrated. I think a lot of our upbringing was like learning from friends, watering it down, using it for our own use and satisfaction and feeling needed and all these things, versus it being like the best thing. It should be celebrated, because I think with our marriage, it was only discovered in years 4, 5, and 6 that this is a lot of fun. It was fear-based, like, oh, this is gross. I don't know what to do. This is bad. Are we supposed to do that? That doesn't make it, you know? So the difference between those two conversations of how to make it a positive thing versus a fearful thing.
And I think, I wish I could remember this book series, but I'll send it to you so you can, put it up there. But I think Focus on the Family has one too that takes you through this developmental process with your kids to be able to introduce it, continue the conversation as they get older. But starting out, that this is how God created families, mommies and daddies, and they get married and they love each other, and then they have babies and start creating like this special love, and then progressing from there in terms of what actual
so
the deed.
So we're using the word sex to our 8 and 6-year-old already? Is like when we're explaining it? Is that? I mean, probably the 8-year-old. Yes,
probably the 8-year-old.
He probably's already heard it. Knows it.
Yeah.
But the 6-year-old is like a little watered down.
Yeah. So yeah, consider their development. Like by the time you're 8, 9, you're getting into more like abstract thinking. So you're able to start being able to, understand kind of some of those nuances or conversations. The 6-year-old is still pretty concrete thinking. So you want to just be careful how you, so mommy and daddy, we have, babies, there's something that when we really love each other. But again, I this book series really helps describe it.
Okay, we'll have to get
because it also depends on the developmental stage of your child, what they've already heard.
Yeah.
Yes.
I would always tell my kids, hey, you're going to hear things at school. And I would say, maybe things about sex that you don't understand or you don't know what that is. You can always come and, that's an open conversation.
Yes.
You can always, so
That's
if you
good.
introduce that, then they know it's not a taboo subject. I
Okay.
didn't want it to be a taboo subject.
No,
in my home.
we don't either.
I do think parents have to be careful of not putting all the pressure on the kids to bring it up. So the idea of, hey, if there's ever anything you want to talk about, you can talk to me about it. That's a great thing to communicate and let them know. But if that's the extent of it,
Oh, absolutely, right.
it's kind of like a boss that has an open door policy. Yeah, but it's a lot of pressure on the employee to walk into the
That's
boss's
true.
office.
This is, understanding that you've already kind of introduced the topic.
Yeah, to help broach the topic a little bit. But let's kind of spin this now. We're not going to be able to have these conversations well unless we can talk about it with each other. Right. Let's talk about how do we have an open, honest, fair conversation with each other about sex, about intimacy, in a way that nourishes the relationship instead of one that creates tension. So you talked about where this spun off from, and rightly so, is family of origin can impact that. What are some other things that impacts for couples that if they struggle to talk about this?
Well, I think body image can be an impact on that, and not having that permission to be able to talk about it. If you feel like it's always a complaint as opposed to let's be curious, let's try to understand each other, then you don't want to talk about it. It becomes just a source of tension and fighting. And I think, again, just like with your children, it's something you have to do intentionally. It's not just going to come up. You have to make time for that. And if sexual intimacy is a struggle for you, being able to talk about it in a way that doesn't create pressure on the other person, I think sometimes probably getting some professional help or talking, or even just talking to another couple that could help you have those conversations.
I have a question. So, because Blaine and we're pretty open, and we're open with our friends. And so if I'm with my girlfriends and we're genuinely just having like conversations about our sex lives with our girlfriends who we trust, is that appropriate? Like, because you can learn a lot from your friends in like a respectful way. Mm-hmm. Is that a way that people can learn? Be like, I don't know if mine's good or not. Like, what do you guys do? How many times? Or is that disrespectful to your husband? Because
it could be.
I feel like some wives would be very private, where I'm like super open because I know he's comfortable with it. But what do you suggest?
I think that's something that you would have to, talk about with your spouse, because they may not be comfortable. Some guys are much more private about that and self-conscious about, this. And I mean, there is some of that, concept that is something between you and your husband. Mm-hmm. If it's, kind of general talk, I'm a girl. Girls like to talk, chat. And we learn from each other. We are more open, but some guys can have some problem with that. I think clearing that up and making sure that's okay.
I think for me it would be a question of, no doubt, is it respectful?
Yeah.
I think that, because I get in conversations sometimes and I'm like, I would never talk about Jenny in that way. And it's a complaining session, right? It's
that's not what I'm talking about.
So it can't be that. But then also the idea of, are you talking to your husband about it?
Yeah.
In other words, I can see some scenarios in which I'll go talk to the girls or I'll talk to the guys about it, but we're actually not talking to each other about it, because the conversation with each other is where productivity can actually happen. That is a conversation with a guy friend for me about sex generally is not going to be that beneficial to Jenny and I's sexual intimacy. A conversation with Jenny about it, as long as it's honoring and respectful and curious and all those things, that becomes, I think, extremely positive.
But honestly, something that really helped us was talking to a couple that was older than us and learning what worked for them. And it helped our sex life so much. But we were together.
Yeah. And I would, parallel on that conversation with the guys, where one guy has a great sex life. Suddenly the expectations of the other guys in the circle are like, oh, wow, I guess that's what we should be doing 5 times a week. And it could be some guy thinking he's better than he is and he's insecure and all these real things.
Right.
But it's when you bring in like other expectations from, that's what they're doing, I guess I should do that. That's not what it should be. Right. But I totally agree. We've learned from different places. It's like, go and do the research. That's okay to figure out what's normal,
I guess that's
what's healthy.
There's some great books on. I've suggested some that are helpful, and just even in terms of logistics of what might be helpful. And yeah, lots of research.
And we felt too that we've influenced or encouraged or created healthy marriages in different ways for other couples because we have made it okay to talk about, right? There's been conversations around, like, some people are really uncomfortable with it and you can kind of sense it. So we don't like go into details, but it's like, how's it going? It is the marriage counseling kind of scenario, right? But amongst friends. But we know, our couples that we've been influenced by almost gave us a little bit of, but again, together, not authority or
freedom?
Like freedom
Permission.
to permission.
Permission.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Permission to be like, okay, I guess, we respect their spiritual walk. We respect them as leaders. They're doing okay. Let's try that. Like, let's schedule it. I think that was one of the things that we learned from the marriage conference once before, or whatever it was like, it's okay for you to schedule it on a Tuesday night because then I don't have to put the pressure on her. And then it kind of got into a spot where it's just like, well, I don't want it just to be an act. I want it to be intimate. Well, let me get there, because the more we have it, the better it will become. And that really developed for us.
But then also we've talked about, like, sometimes it is just get it done.
And I have to be okay
and you
with
have to be okay with that, because that's all I have tonight.
Exactly.
Yes, I'm okay with that.
You might have more desire, but your capacity is low.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's something we've had to talk about. And even like just me being in the moment, being like, I don't like that, and being, okay, I like that. That's good. I would never. I would just lie there like a.
Right.
He would call me a dead fish.
Whoa. We're gonna cut that.
Was that part of the foreplay, or was
Just saying, it took a lot of work
and
for
that's
us.
part of the learning and trying different things and exploring each other and you gradually create that permission or environment where you can feel safe to
and
say
to
those
normalize
things.
that process. I think that's one
Right.
thing that we need to do is, I mean, if you're engaged and about to get married, or if you're young, married, newly married, you can be thinking that, man, this is such a tension point. Something's messed up with us.
Yeah.
No. That is as natural as anything. And it takes a process now of learning how to talk about it, of being vulnerable, of making mistakes. And literally, I tell young couples all the time, look, good sex is probably a decade away. Like, it's good, no doubt. But it's going to get better a decade from now and two decades from now. And so there's to normalize, I think that process is so important.
One of the people texted me last night, or a while back, and the question was, hey, we are getting newlywed, and the idea of sex is only good later on in life. What can I do today so that it is great? Right? And it is, I think it's a bit of the expectations that you have of it, and communicate those expectations. Am I right? Or wrong,
and it will be good. It's going to be good.
Yeah.
It's just, it's kind of one of those things of you don't know what you don't know. And I do weddings all the time, and you look at this couple and they literally love each other as much as anything in the world. But if they love each other well, you talk to them 20 years from now and they will say, I love them more now than.
Absolutely.
And it doesn't diminish
That's good.
what they had at the altar. It's just there's so much more life experience that's present now. So I'm not in any way implying you're going to have a bad sex life once you get married. I'm not saying that at all. For a lot, it's going to be really good. It's going to be far better as you grow, as you mature, as you learn, as you get more
Grow
comfortable.
spiritually together.
No, absolutely.
And,
I think so.
the attachment, we talked about releasing oxytocin, that love deepens and gets stronger, and you feel safer. You grow into higher levels of intimacy where, you completely trust this person. And all of that is connected to sexual intimacy.
Yeah. Let's talk about some practical things, Blaine and Adrienne. What is it that y'all learned from this older couple, from others, that really helped you make the transition to where this isn't nearly as much of a point of contention as it once was?
I think for me, I just got permission to have fun. There's no shame attached to it when it's with your husband, and you can enjoy it. Because for me, getting married and then being I don't even know how to let my guard down, and it just feels wrong, But that was an upbringing thing. What else?
Yeah, for me, I think it would have been the fantasizing about it. You see older brothers getting married, and you're I'm a romantic kind of guy. I have all the feelings, and so then suddenly it was I have this picture of what it should be, and we have a marriage now, a year in, 2 years in, and it's like, this isn't anything that it should be. And so then my overcoming of, I'm like, do you even love me? Like, what's going on here? I had to kind of come through that barrier, because it was like my expectation wasn't met, but that was so far from her expectations. So that's why I get so passionate about like young couples, of like, how early is too early, but also how soon can we start talking about expectations? Like, is this how you picture it? Is this what's going on? What, that sort of thing, so that you can communicate through that before you're guessing what the other person is. Because we've talked about this in the past, the vulnerability of it is big time, right? Mm-hmm. So all the thoughts of body image and all these things, I'm now standing there in front of someone that I just got married to, is like, what a nerve-wracking scenario. And when he has this expectation, she has that one.
Right.
So
that's why I think it's important, like in that premarital, to talk about those expectations when it comes to sex and finances and parenting and roles. And then you're able to start really, starting that vulnerability and expressing your expectations. I think that's really, really important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think for us, it really was, one, learning how to talk about it. Mm-hmm. So I didn't want to say the wrong thing. I don't want to be hurtful, right? I have more of an anxious attachment kind of pathway, so I'm going to be holding back some of my thoughts. But Jenny's going to she's going to know something's wrong. I'm just not going to tell her what it is, because I don't want to hurt her, right? Which actually creates the pain. Mm-hmm. And then to have the courage for her to say, Kevin, why don't you just say that? It would make it easier if you would. Right. And then what do those conversations look like? And then to learn, what we often do is, I tell couples all the time, do not talk about sex in bed. Right, that's a bad time to talk about it. Like let's not have the act and then go back and say, look at the black box. Where did this crash happen? Right. But instead, on a walk, the next day on a walk, let's talk about, what do you like, what do you not like, what worked, what didn't work. And so I always joke that our old neighbors are probably looking out their window, going, oh, look at that couple walking. How sweet is that? Having no idea the actual conversation that we're having. But it's so much safer to have that conversation in the daytime, outside, walking, not even face to face, rather than laying in bed with the pressure of, are we about to do this or not do this, and to have that kind of conversation. So I think to learn how to talk about it, and then you make mistakes, and you forgive each other, and you love each other, and you figure out, all right, how can I prevent that from happening again? How that went wrong, and so for me, really, it is more anxiously, I want to have sex, I'm afraid to say it. Mm-hmm. She feels the pressure of it, doesn't want to let me down, and then how do we navigate that kind of thing? And that's where things like the 24-hour rule and just some basic guidelines of here's how we can operate kind of came through. Barbara, on previous episodes we talked about attachment, and so with anxious attachment and avoidant attachment, how do they approach sex differently? And what could be some signs that, now that's actually anxious attachment or avoidant attachment, not secure attachment when it comes to sex?
Yeah, with anxious attachment, they're looking for that connection. So if they're not getting that physical intimacy, they feel rejected, but with the avoidant, they're afraid of being disapproved or not performing. So then they tend to withdraw, just because they're trying to protect the relationship, but also themselves from feeling like they've been a disappointment. And so that's where you kind of see it in the sexual intimacy. I see that a lot generally, in particular with guys, where not that there is kind of a general, thing where sometimes the guy can be the withdrawer, where he very much is insecure about just being accepted and living up to whatever those expectations are. And that can come into the bedroom, where they feel like they can't please their wife or they can't perform. Let's say they have one night where, they're not able to perform. Well, that could just derail them for months and months, because they're so afraid to try it again. Mm-hmm. And then they end up being the one that avoids. And then the pursuer is just becoming more and more anxious. So then they become more critical and demanding. It just creates this experience where they're missing each other. Yeah. And they really need some help to kind of get out of that cycle. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I was going to just say like that, not some of those things reminded us at the beginning where it was, come on, this is what we do as a married couple. No, this is gross. I hate it. It's painful. It's all the things. And it's just like, come on, no. Like, to the point where it was, I remember in one of our like nights or whatever, it was tears and pain and, scared. And this idea of like, well, then I guess we're broken. I should just go there. You should go there. Yeah. And then we went and saw Donna again.
She's back.
She's back. But to seek professional help, to have someone in the middle to communicate these desires and this, we were just missing each other. We wanted the same thing. We wanted a great marriage, but we didn't understand how far apart our
each other's needs.
Our needs were. Yeah. So.
What's going on, Barbara, with pain and sex? Because from a man's perspective, it's just, I have no idea what's happening.
Yeah.
And yeah,
there's some
women
medical
experience this.
What's happening? Some medical conditions, especially. I think, like obviously those first couple times, there's some, medical things that are happening that make it very painful. But there are some conditions, one of them is that vaginismus that creates painful intercourse. And I have patients in my office that are struggling with that, and there is help for that, but often they're so afraid to talk about it that they'll go decades without
Sheila
getting any
Gregoire,
help.
in her book, The Great Sex Rescue, she talks about, and I can't quote the stat by any means, but how much more common that is in the evangelical world than outside of it.
I bet.
And so why is that?
Everything we're talking about, because there's this, a taboo about talking about it. There's a stigma about it, and just not that permission to be able to be open and honest about it. So we kind of hide that. The other thing I want to mention too, though, with painful intercourse for women in particular, obviously, that is maybe some abuse in their past. So, your body can store those memories. And if there has been some abuse, then that can trigger your body memory to go into the tightness or the spasms that make it more painful. And so, if that is happening, I just encourage you to, first of all, get checked medically. And if it's not something medical, then maybe it's something buried deep in your past that you don't even have memory of that would be helpful to explore.
Yeah. And it's your story for sure, but the idea of just the tenseness, the fearness of the unknownness.
Or just like not being able to relax.
Yes.
And a lot of that starts with your mind so that your body can relax, but not even be able to relax your body. And then if you're tense and you're trying to, fit something into something else.
Yeah.
It's painful.
Yeah.
But also that goes to the foreplay piece, right? Because women get aroused through touch. So if the foreplay is non-existent, a woman doesn't get aroused, and so then it doesn't prepare your vagina to be entered. So of course it's dry and it's tight, and it's painful. So that goes back to is your spouse taking the time that women need to be aroused and to feel comfortable and to be able to relax. And that goes back to the mental piece, being able to get there mentally.
So that would have been some of the things that we learned early on in age, where it was like, nobody taught me anything. So it was, I saw the movie, I did the thing. Okay. First night, it's just like, just go. And it's like, whoa, what are you like, hold on here. But then I'll even further it to now with kids. It's tense, it's stressed, it's, come on, let's do this thing.
Right, hurry up, we only got 5-10 minutes.
Right, or sometimes I don't want the touching because I've been touched all day. So I'm like, just do it quick. But then, it's not enjoyable.
Well, but that's okay too. Sometimes it's just, it's just a quick thing to, for the other person.
I want that on the Valentine's Day card though.
Do it quick.
Just do it quick. Love Adrienne.
And then we discovered.
Sorry for what I said when I was hungry.
That's the truth. But when we discovered, and I know it's going to be encouraging for others, that's why I say it, is like this idea of, going off to a hotel weekend or taking time for ourselves, or, you find the time where grandma and grandpa can come and watch the kids, and it's intentional. there's a different human being when she's whisked away from all the stresses of life. And it usually doesn't happen that night you get to the hotel or that morning. And then, okay, now I can relax. And then suddenly I'm like, oh my gosh, this is a new woman. This is amazing, right?
Yeah, give her a week and just see it.
Take me to Mexico and then see what happens.
Let's go to Cabo for a week and then
I will do anything.
We've talked about it before. I mean, that's where the research is that 1 extra hour of sleep a night for a woman is more effective with libido than anything else science has discovered. So just the power of sleep alone.
And women need more sleep than men.
Yeah.
Like a lot more. I think.
It's an
I read that on
Instagram
Instagram and I believe it with my whole heart.
Ella hasn't memed that to me yet, so I don't know if that's accurate. But I do think, Blaine, I mean, this is something Jenny and I always prioritize, and I think it's so important. And the expense of it does not have to be that extreme, because you do not have to go to fancy places. Mm-hmm. If you have more means, then by all means. But can you create a space where we are annually at minimum going to get away just the two of us? And how do you do that? And let's face it, some people look at that, and I get how blessed we were. Grandma lived next door.
Sure.
Oh.
But on purpose. However, if you don't have that, okay, can we, with our sister, with our neighbor, with our church friends, can we create this concept of, okay, you take my kids for this weekend, I'll take yours for next weekend. Mm-hmm. And now we both get this space and we're honoring it. And yeah, there's a price to be paid because now I'm going to have to take care of all these other kids. But it's going to be worth it for the importance of the connection. And there is this sexual reset. I think that can so often happen as you just have that time away.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, when we were younger, married, we didn't have either family, but we had a church family, and we would do that exactly. We couldn't afford to go away to a hotel, but we would switch time with friends, and just even staying at home and getting your kids out of the house. I mean, you can turn your living room into like a romantic, like, if you have a fireplace, and we used to do stuff like that, just put out a blanket and have a little picnic and turn it into something fun. But even for older couples, you notice the difference once your kids leave the house, and this freedom, like it just releases a lot more permission and fun and passion, because you don't have that worry that someone's could hear or is going to run into the room. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So let's give the average couple out there who they don't regularly talk about sex. Mm-hmm. They have no idea how to start. What do we do? Well, one thing you can do, forward this episode to your spouse and say, hey, I just listened to this. I think it's great. Let's talk about this later. You listen, let's talk about it later. That's one way to go about it. What would be some very practical things that they could do to have this conversation? Because my thought on it is there a way that we can have our next conversation be a really positive one? And then we'll get to the issues. But let's have a win first. What would be some practical advice you could give to the average couple of, here's one way to safely, securely, successfully talk about sex tonight?
Well, again, it just depends on what the history has been. Often often the guy will bring it up, maybe, or the wife, depending on who's concerned about it. This is where I think like having tools is a good resource, because if you don't know how to bring it up, then you have that talking points in your book. I have talking points in my book to be able to, bring up these difficult conversations.
So what you're saying is go buy friends, partners, and lovers, and read the lovers section
again.
and kiss me again. Exactly. You got to learn how to promote right on the spot. Yeah. One thought, Barbara, critique this. One thought I would have. Again, if your relationship is generally in a good spot, but this is just an area you want to talk more about. All right, go out on the porch, go to the hot tub, wherever, go on a walk. But I think on vacation, Jenny and I tend to find a place to sit, and there's a view, and the TV isn't on, the phones are not out, and that promotes now conversation, right? And what if we just talked about, hey, here are 3 times from these 25 years that we've been married that I still think about. Now let's just talk about the good. What was it? Here's what I liked. Here was the setting. Do you remember this moment? Do you remember this time? Okay, now if I said the word married sex to you, what is it that comes to your mind? What are the good things? And let's start the conversation in a positive place. Here's what I love. Here's what I've enjoyed. And let's start there. And then over time, as we have these conversations, we can get into more of the, I'm uncomfortable with this. I don't like that. What if we change that? But I think so often the conversation starts with the negative that then hinders all the positive communication. Whereas if you can start with the positive,
Yes.
then begin to work toward the negative. That's kind of my thought. What have y'all found successful?
I was gonna maybe ask, like, so I was always ready to go. I was always excited to learn and do things, and whenever you say go, I'm ready. But how did you get to a spot where you were wanting to say go more? Or what were some of the key pivotal moments? Was it getting to know yourself? Was it making it, like when did you become more vulnerable? Because the person you are today is far more, accessible to talking about it. But that was our greatest frustration in our marriage, was we didn't know how to talk about it.
You're telling me that Adrienne, whenever y'all first got married, would not be on a podcast talking about sex?
She wouldn't be.
Yeah, I'm actually surprised I'm here right now.
Me too, Adrienne. So I know how you're feeling.
Yes. That's a big question.
Okay.
I think a lot of it was like our friends shared with us what worked for them, and then having the permission to be like, you can have fun, you can enjoy it, and you can talk to him about it. Like he doesn't have to be guessing what is good for you. Like, so I don't know.
Well, I think one of them was going to a marriage conference and being given tips and reading the book and giving hey babe, check this out. Like, this is normal.
Yeah. I didn't even know that I could talk to him about it. I think it was just so such a private thing, and it kind of freaked me out, I don't know.
I remember my husband bought a book, and just kind of said, here's some fun things we could try, so it started opening up the conversation. But, for me, it was, I was realizing that what was my problem, which is what led me to kind of explore with God, where my hesitation was. And that led us to have a lot of conversations. And that really is what helped heal us and heal our relationship.
Well, I think this is an area. There's multiple areas, but I think this is definitely an area where if you try to do this on your own and you can't, okay, man, make an appointment. Let's go have some conversations, some professional help. And this, I've always told couples, this is one area actually that I think that you can get a faster return on investment in counseling maybe than any other. Depending on what your circumstance is, because a professional can help you talk about what you actually need to talk about so much faster than maybe you can do on your own. So I think in the end, again, apart from active addiction, abuse, or adultery, for everybody else, take a step, find a way, over dinner, go for a walk, find the porch, do something, and just say, and admit the vulnerability of it. Hey, honey, I want to talk about this, but I really don't know how. But can we have a conversation about this? And here's what I love and why I love you and what this looks like. And I think if couples can begin to have the conversation, to learn to talk about sex, it will go a long way in changing the odds of marriage. Until next time, Blaine, Adrienne, Dr. Wilson, thanks so much for being with us. Kevin Thompson, we'll see you on the next episode.